Namaste. So now we've finished with the first chapter, the summary of the topics of the Tripurārahasya. And now we're going to continue with the second chapter, where Paraśurāma inquires again from his guru. Bhagavan, dear and esteemed master, O Omniscient One, ocean of mercy. So Bhagavan, oh, there goes our power. Bhagavan means the fortunate one. The most fortunate one is the jnani, one who has realized the absolute. And so he is addressed as Bhagavan, Dattātreya. Now, Dattātreya and Paraśurāma both are recognized by the Vaishnavas as incarnations of God, Vishnu. So they're both called Bhagavan, but not because of what they did, but because of who they are, because they're jnanis, because they're self-realized. You see? I mean, Paraśurāma went and killed all the Kshatriyas in India 21 times. So his prowess is amazing, superhuman. But that's not the reason he's called Bhagavan. It's because he became a jnani, he became self-realized. Like Ramana Maharshi is called Bhagavan. See, any realized soul earns that title, not because of what he does, but because of his realization. Then Omniscient One, Sarvajñā, see, one who knows everything, who knows the truth, is called Sarvajñā. Ocean of mercy, Karuna Sindhu. The mercy of an enlightened one cannot be measured. It's like the ocean. It's profound, it's deep, and it's overwhelming in its power. And when a wave of transcendental pleasure arises in that ocean, it's like a tsunami. It inundates everything. So this is Guru. This is Guru. Now, to realize this, to experience it for yourself, you have to be a real disciple. And that's what's missing nowadays. There are actually several people I personally know who can act as guru. But where are the disciples? They're all busy in economic development and other activities. And this is exactly the topic that Paraśurāma is going to raise with Dattātreya. Once before, for good reason, I was furious with the kingly class. 21 times I strode the land, exterminating them all. My forefathers were pleased with my devotion to them. My wrath was at last appeased. On hearing of the renowned Rama, the very incarnation of Hari in Ayodhya, my wrath was rekindled. Blinded by fury and proud of my prowess, I challenged him. I was defeated by that great Lord, and my pride was humbled. However, out of his innate kindness, he let me go with my life because I was a Brahmin. Now, this is the old days of honorable Kshatriyas. In Kali Yuga, we don't have any of those. They were all wiped out in the Battle of Kurukshetra 5,000 years ago. Now all we have is rogues and thieves masquerading as kings and presidents and whatnot. But in those days, the kings had real honor. And instead of having wars that killed the citizens and destroyed the wealth of the country, they would meet on designated battlefields, such as Kurukshetra, and they would throw down a challenge. And then the other kings had to respond to that challenge. when they would respond by fighting as in a tournament style. In other words, kings against kings, soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals, and like that. Not that they would carry the war to the people, but they would settle it among themselves. Them was the good old days. As I was returning, mortified by defeat, I realized the vanity of the ways of the world. Now, this is the only way that most people ever come to realize that the world is vanity, vanity, all is vanity, to quote the Song of Solomon. And it is, because in ordinary consciousness, everything we do is out of ego. I, me, mine, mine, mine. So until we get past that, there's no question of self-realization. That's why devotion has to be learned first, before self-realization even becomes a possibility. Unexpectedly, I met Samvarta, the lord of the Avadutas, and instinctively recognized him to be like fire in embers. Every inch of his body filled one with exhilaration, so that I had a refreshing feeling in his mere proximity. So this is the symptom of an enlightened one. His whole body is filled with ecstasy. There's no question of sense gratification, because he's completely full of pleasure just by his very nature. And this is our nature as well. But we cover it over with this mind, ego, body, senses, and so many nonsense activities. So we don't realize it. And the job of the guru is to remove this nonsense so that the real self is realized. I asked him to tell me about his state. His answer was clear-cut and expressive of the essence of sweet nectar of eternal life. So just like Ramana Maharshi, his answers are so clear, so concise, so perfect, yet they don't make any sense to most people. It seems far-fetched, incredible, confirmed. So in this way, he approached this Avaduta who was wandering naked in the forest. And he asked him the real questions, because his ego was bruised by the defeat. And this is everybody's story. Everybody thinks they are, the greatest thing in the world, until the world defeats them. And then they realize, maybe there's something more than this. I could not pursue the conversation then, and felt like a beggar maid before a queen. This is Paraśurāma, who had defeated kshatriyas all over the world 21 times. But before someone like Samvarta, he feels like an idiot. He feels like he knows nothing, like he has no prowess at all. But this is the proper mood in which to approach Guru. However, I prayed to him, and he directed me to thee, Dattātreya. Accordingly, I have sought shelter at thy holy feet, just as a blind man who is entirely dependent on his friends. In other words, I know nothing. I'm a blank slate. Everything I knew before is invalid. And the proof of that is that I can't rescue myself from this suffering. What Samvarta said is not at all clear to me. Now, this goes all the way back to one of our first series, Matrix Learning. In Matrix Learning, we talked about meaning and ontology. And basically, ontology is the background that gives meaning to the foreground. Ontology is the context that gives meaning and significance to the content. Ontology is a system of relations among the categories of existence. And as we have discussed many, many times, in the Vedic system, there are 4 levels of ontology. Dvaita-vada, Dvaita-dvaita, or Vishishta-dvaita-vada, Vivarta-vada, and Ajata-vada. So if you are on some lower level and someone is speaking on some higher level, you will not understand. You won't even be able to retain it. It'll just evaporate. You won't be able to keep it in your mind. Why? You don't have the proper ontological background to understand the meaning, to duplicate the message in your own mind. So everything that Samvarta said was lost on Paraśurāma. He couldn't retain any of it, what to speak of apply any of it, because he didn't have the background. So basically what he's asking Dattātreya for is the background to the higher stages, the Ajata stage especially, because that was the platform that Samvarta was on. Lord, kindly explain what Samvarta told me before. It is certain that I cannot realize the goal until it is made known to me. In other words, until I have this background, this ontology of the highest state, I won't be able to understand what he said, and I certainly won't be able to realize it. So this is the role and function of guru, because the guru has to explain to you and then test you to see if you got it. If you got it, he'll verify it. You know, in computer terms, it would be like a checksum. When you download a file, it comes with a checksum to make sure it hasn't been corrupted. If the checksum matches, you're all good. But if it doesn't, it means somehow there's been an error. So the same thing is true in spiritual life. The guru is giving instructions. Then he has to test you. Did you get it? Did you duplicate the message? Can you apply it? If so, okay, you're all good. If not, you need further instruction. So the guru has to be someone on a higher platform, a higher level than you. I've seen, for example, here in India, temples of Ganesh advertised as you worship Ganesh for material gains. So the people, the priests in the temple, they're out for material gains. And the people coming to the temple are also up for material gains. So they're both on the same level. They're both ignorant. So what benefit can come from that worship? Even if they get their material stuff, it's only temporary. They haven't really changed their state. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about letting go of all the old ideas, coming to the guru as a blank slate, and letting him give you the background against which self-realization is possible, meaningful, and doable. So he goes on. Misery is not absence of happiness, but limited happiness. I may get my happiness, by performance of religious vows, by learning or economic development. But then I know they're going to be taken away. Nothing is permanent in this world, including our life. So any happiness, so-called happiness, is actually simply delaying the misery. For as happiness recedes, misery pours in. Isn't it? All happiness is just temporary. And when it's over, the misery is even worse than before. Because now we have felt some happiness, but it's gone. So compared with that happiness, the same old misery feels much worse. This is not the only miserable result of action, but there remains a still worse one, the fear of death, which cannot be mitigated by any amount of activity. We're all going to die. Huh? That's how this ends. Everybody dies in the end. That's how this story ends. So, what's the meaning of life then? Huh? There can only be one answer. To attain self-realization, that happiness which does not decay with the body, that which is eternal, beginningless, and endless. When you attain self-realization, you realize it's always been this way. I've always been who I am. It's not that you change. It's not that something is added to you. It's not that something new happens that never happened before. No, it's the same old thing, but you're just recognizing it as the truth. And that requires a certain background knowledge. That background is what we're trying to give you. But you're resisting tooth and nail, clinging to your old beliefs. Huh? I had one student, ex-student now, who was clinging to this idea of the objective world, the objective reality as being real. And again I brought up the point that, well, everything disappears when you go to sleep. So how can you say it's real? Because it's not permanent. And he was saying, well, actually it is permanent because other people can see my body while I'm asleep. So, and then when I wake up, they tell me, yeah, I'm still there and everything is the same. No. No. Because those other people are part of the same dream, the same illusion. Ever do lucid dreaming? If you are in a dream and you wake up, then you can actually ask questions and talk to the people in the dream. And if you ask them, are you real? They'll say, of course I'm real. So the same is true in the big dream that we call waking life. If you ask people, well, am I the same person that I was before? Was I still here while I was sleeping? Oh, yeah, we saw you sleeping. No. If they, even allowing that they're real, okay? What did they see? They saw a body. Whether you are present in that body or not, they can't tell. You see? Nobody can tell. Everybody, it could be like a big conspiracy, everybody walking around you are androids or something. And there's no way to tell. This is the philosophical problem I mentioned the last time. That there is no way to verify the reality of the world because we don't have another world to compare it to measure it with. Like a pound or a kilogram is a standard in some lab somewhere. And then we calibrate the scales and we can measure. Yes, this is a pound, this is a kilogram. So where is that standard by which we can measure the universe? Well, of course, it's the self. And by comparison with the self, this is all a dream because it's temporary. How can transient mental concepts of devotion produce intransient results of high truth? Moreover, the practices are continuous, and there seems to be no end to these obligatory duties. I have noticed that Samvarta, the Lord, Bhagavan, is quite happy being completely free from any sense of obligation to act and its disastrous results. He seems to laugh at the ways of the world, to stride unconcerned up the road of fearlessness, like a majestic elephant refreshing itself in a lake of melted snow when the surrounding forest is on fire. Samsara dava nalalidha loka. The world is on fire. The Buddha said the same thing. The world is aflame. Everything is burning up. Nothing is permanent. And we're all being burned by the flames of this fire. So we have to take shelter in the cool lake of absolute truth. But to do that, we have to give up our false concepts of reality. I found him absolutely free from any sense of obligation, and at the same time perfectly happy in his realization of eternal being. How did he gain that state? And what did he tell me? Kindly explain these points, and so rescue me from the jaws of the monster of karma. Praying so, he fell prostrate and took the master's feet in his hands. So this is the thing. We talked before about the paradox of sexuality, that to attain self-realization, you have to give up sexuality. But to give up sexuality, you have to experience it fully so that you realize it can't satisfy you. Otherwise, there may be some lingering doubt in your mind. Well, if I had only done it this way or slightly more to the left. But no, you have to eliminate that doubt, and it can only be eliminated by experience. Similarly, religious, ritualistic processes, such as devotion, cannot result in ultimate self-realization, eternal being. But without performing them, you cannot attain that state. This is the paradox. You have to go through bhakti to attain jnana. And maybe it had confirmed. Thank you. Maybe it takes lifetimes. But without that qualification, without that adhikar, you are not fit to enter the higher levels of self-realization. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.